Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Simple Low Carb Life. And we're going to be talking about some more low carbohydrate substitutions that you can use to incorporate into your low carb pantry and to help you to bake and cook some fantastic recipes at home because they're pretty challenging to find out in the community. So let's take a look. We're on Module 9 and Video 2. So, what are some more low carb substitutions that we can use? We've talked about some already, but let's take a look at some more. Now, everybody loves pasta in American culture and in a lot of cultures throughout the world. Most cultures have some sort of pasta like or starchy food that they like to eat. So that's a tough one in a low carb lifestyle. So let's give you a list of tools that you can use, if you will, so that you can have some pasta substitutes that taste good. Number one, I would say the thing that tastes the most like pasta is shirataki noodles, which are a noodle that's been around in Japan for thousands of years. And it is made of konjac flour, which is also called glucomannan or yam flour. You'll see it in Asian markets predominantly, and it may be used instead of pasta. Now, as I've told you in previous videos, it's packed in pickling lime, which is kind of a cloudy solution, and these are already pre-cooked or pre-formed, and so it looks like noodles swimming in this cloudy liquid. So it's not very visually appealing, number one. Number two is when you open the package, the pickling lime combined with the glucomannan has an almost fishy smell to it. So that can be off-putting for people. But if you can get past those two things, and I'll tell you how to do that, is first off, don't pay attention to the visual cloudiness because it doesn't affect the flavor whatsoever. So when you open the package, you're going to dump these in a colander and rinse with hot water about 30 seconds, and then turn it to cold and rinse for another 30 seconds, and every bit of that fish-like smell will be gone. And there's no seafood in these, it's just a chemical reaction. And so then these noodles look like and taste like al dente pasta when you heat them up. And the packages usually say you only need to heat them for a minute, which I find them a little chewy if I just do it for a minute. So I usually put any noodles that I use in whatever sauce I'm using instead of putting the sauce on top of it so it can absorb the flavors, because otherwise it has no taste to it. So if you can find shirataki noodles, they're great. They're often found at large grocery chains, and if they are found, I know Safeway on the West Coast has them, Kroger, Fred Meyer, different stores throughout the country. They're usually found next to tofu in the refrigerated section. And be sure and read the labels and make sure you're not picking up yakisoba noodles or udon noodles, which have 30, 40 or more grams of carbs per serving. So they should have less than 2, and a lot of them have none of grams of carbs per serving. So shirataki noodles. You can use spaghetti squash instead of pasta. If you've not used spaghetti squash, once you bake this, when you open it up, remove the seeds, it comes out in little strings just like spaghetti. So that's a great replacement for pasta, and you can use it in any way that you would make spaghetti. Pesto, Alfredo, marinara sauce, just use your imagination. Another thing you can do is spiral slice zucchini, daikon radish, or yellow squash instead of pasta. And how you do this is you can purchase a small little spiralizer, or you can get a fancy one for a lot more money that you can find online typically. And if you go to our online store, just get to our main website, and up in the top menu, there'll be a section for online store. Just look in the section where there's equipment. And you'll find an inexpensive spiral slicer. I use them all the time. It works like a pencil sharpener. You just stick in the item, twist it, and these long skinny spirals come out that look like pasta. It's great. You can also slice cabbage and use that as pasta. So if you take the cabbage and put the stem side to side and cut as if you were cutting through the equator, if you're thinking of the cabbage as a globe, when you pull the cabbage apart on those slices, it is in long strips, and you can use that instead of pasta. Now, rice is another big thing that people have in their diet that they really have a hard time finding a replacement for because of its particular structure, and it's very starchy. Well, Most people use rice or pasta, quite frankly, as a vehicle to put their sauces on to help soak up the sauces and the flavor. So you can accomplish that by ricing cauliflower. And if you go to our link listed on the screen there, you can find out how to make riced cauliflower. So this is a great substitution for rice, and rice is extremely high in carbohydrates, around 40 to 60 net carbs per half cup cooked. So you really want to avoid using rice at all costs. And rice cauliflower is a great replacement for rice, and you can use it in any way that you would make rice. I've seen recipes and made them where they're Spanish spiced, Mexican spiced, Indian spiced. Um, Basically, you can do just about anything you would do with rice. Just use your imagination. Now, what can we use instead of wheat flour? And we've talked about this in other videos, but instead of wheat flour or other grain or rice flours that are extremely high in carbs, well, these are the most commonly used, and you can find them locally, or again, you can go to our online store and see if you can find them there if you can't find them in your local markets, which would be coconut flour, almond meal, or flour, it's often called both names, hazelnut flour, peanut flour, cashew flour, macadamia meal or macadamia flour, or soy flour instead. These are all much lower in carbs and taste great in any recipe. The sweeteners that you can use again would be in order of what I would use is stevia, xylitol, and erythritol instead of sugar, honey, agave, date sugar, coconut sugar, or any of the other high carb alternatives. Now, what can you use to thicken your soups or sauces? Now, that's traditionally the role of cornstarch and flour, which are both very high in carbs. So, what can you use? Well, if you like a Thai flavor or peanut flavor, then you can use peanut flour. You can make peanut flour as well just by buying roasted peanuts and putting it in the food processor until it becomes flour-like, meal-like. You can also use whey protein, chickpea flour, which you can buy in many grocery stores. Bob's Red Mill is a brand that makes it. It's almost always in every grocery store that's a large chain. You can use hemp protein powder or soy flour. You can also use coconut flour is my favorite. It's not listed here on the video, but basically my favorite thickening agent to make gravies is simply a tablespoon of coconut flour with your drippings or whatever you're making as a fat portion of your gravies. So there's some suggestions there. Walden Farms, which we talked about before, is a company that makes dozens of sauces and salad dressings and other basically dips that you can use in a low carb lifestyle or even low calorie lifestyle if that's the approach that people are using. People use Walden Farms products in a low carb lifestyle low calorie lifestyle as well. But basically, all of their products are all 0 calories, 0 carbs, and 0 fat. They're not made with weird ingredients. They're all with natural ingredients. And while there are natural ingredients used as flavorings, they're in tiny, tiny amounts. So these are great products. I have a number of them in my home, and I really love their caramel syrup because you can't really find low carb caramel syrup because it is made of sugar typically. But this one is a really good imitation of that. Also, their barbecue sauces are great. Their salad dressings are very good as well. Now, what can you do for replacement for chips and crackers and pretzels and all those crunchy things? Well, here are a few things. Soy nuts that are dry roasted. You can buy them and roast them yourself, bake them in the ovens, and flavor them however you'd like. Or you can buy them already roasted. Whole Foods typically has them. If there's a Whole Foods in your area, you can find them also on our website on the online store. Roasted edamame. Several companies make that. Salted nuts, but again, beware that salted nuts have enough fat in them and with the salt combined can be a trigger food, so have that on your radar, no more than 1/4 of a cup a day. Roasted seaweed, roasted kale chips, or baked kale chips rather. And again, these are a little higher in carbs, so be sure and read the labels. You can calculate how much of a portion that you can have, but vastly less carbs in any amount than pretzels, chips, or crackers. So those are some nice crunchy replacements. Flaxseed meal can be used instead of wheat flour to make conventional crackers. And if you want to make your own, here is a link to a spicy flaxseed crackers, and you can leave out the hot spices if you want. Just look at the recipe there on your screen and try that out. You can have pureed cauliflower instead of mashed potatoes. Again, if you go to our recipe section shown at the bottom of the screen, there are recipes for many of these things that I'm talking about right now. You just select whichever recipe you want, click on the recipe name, and it will take you to the recipe. Chayote squash instead of apples for apple crisp or apple cobbler recipes, and you would use almond meal crust instead. I make this a lot, and it is fantastic, and it tastes exactly like apple pie. I'm not kidding. You can use jicama instead of apple slices if you want some crunchy snack. And also, jicama is a great snack for dipping. So if you want to dip in a variety of dips that you make that are low carb, you can use jicama instead of the higher carb things that we typically use like crackers. You can slice any type of peppers to use and flatten them out instead of tortillas if you want to make enchiladas. And again, there's several recipes for that on our website. Instead of taco shells, you can use romaine or butter lettuce, which frankly hold the items inside a lot better than a taco shell does. And it's nice and crispy, and I really like it. Just add some salt with it, and it's just fantastic. You can also use lettuce wrap, romaine or butter, or any big leaf lettuce that you'd like, instead of bread for deli sandwiches. So there are a number of substitutions that you can use for traditionally high-carb foods. And once you get into the habit of that, it's light and delicious. And really, if you think about most bread that is used on sandwiches, most tortillas, most rices or pastas, they're not foods that taste great alone. They're simply used as a vehicle to hold items and eat in your hand, or in the case of pasta and rice, as a vehicle to hold and soak up your sauces. So if you use these other low carb items instead, you will stay on track and you'll lose weight and you'll have a healthier life. Now, the rice substitute, also Miracle Noodle makes a rice-shaped shirataki noodle. That can be used instead of rice if you want to go that route. Or again, you can go to our website and learn exactly how to make riced cauliflower. And there are several recipes on that link that you see on the screen that will instruct you how to make rice dishes in several ways using cauliflower. Now, how do you alter traditional recipes that you already have in your home? Well, here are some suggestions. And these are generalities. You have to play with all recipes to get them exactly right. But these are general ways that you can tweak high-carb recipes. So first, you want to replace sugar with non-sugar sweeteners. And we've discussed those quite a bit. But in baking, you want to use erythritol or xylitol because they will tolerate heat. If you're not baking something and just whipping it up, stevia is perfectly fine. You want to replace wheat flour with almond meal is the easiest because you can replace it in a 1-to-1 ratio just like you would flour. You can use coconut flour or other low-carb flours, but coconut flour has its own particular challenges. Again, as we've discussed in previous videos, coconut flour acts like a really super sponge. And if a recipe calls for, let's say, a 1 cup of wheat flour, you want to reduce, when you're using coconut flour, to at least 1/3 of that amount. So instead of 1 cup, you would use 1/3 a cup. And coconut flour, because it acts like a super sponge, even though you're still reducing the amount to 1/3, you also need to double your liquids. So if you have a recipe that calls for example 1 cup of flour, you would reduce that to 1/3 of a cup. And if it asks for 2 eggs, you want to use 4 eggs. Or if it asks for 1/2 cup of water, you want to add a cup. And then if it's still too thick and dry appearing, then you need to add even more liquids. If you end up getting too many liquids, then just add a teaspoon at a time of coconut flour to get the right consistency. Now, when you are using substitution of rice of veggies or shiitake noodles for rice or pasta in dishes, again they make a great substitute, and you can put any sauce on it. You can also use deli meat, thinly sliced chicken, or flattened peppers in place of lasagna noodles, like we were discussing. But deli meat flattened out instead of a lasagna noodle to make lasagna makes a great lasagna. Also, I've seen them with thinly sliced chicken as well. So use your imagination. You can also make low carb breads, pancakes, biscuits, or waffles instead of high carb ones. And there are many, many recipes on our Pinterest boards for that, and some on our own website as well. Again, you can make low carb sauces and gravies with low carb ingredients instead of cornstarch or flour, like we were discussing. So think outside the box. If you want to make ice cream or frozen yogurt using non-sugar sweeteners instead of high-carb ice cream, they're very hard to find in a grocery store, and when you do find low-carb ones, they have all sorts of chemical additives. If you want to make your own, here are 2 recipes right on the screen here that you can just click on, or basically pause the video, copy and paste it, and you can make your own ice cream. Also, our Pinterest boards have a number of recipes for ice cream as well. If you want to find our Pinterest boards for not only our own original ideas and recipes, but also curated recipes, then visit our Pinterest site and you can pin the ones you like so you can keep going back to it. Pinterest is awesome. We are always updating and adding new recipes to our website, and all of our recipes have nutritional information. And there's the link on the screen again to our recipe index, and you can click on individual recipes that you may like. So be sure and visit all of our websites and our Pinterest boards, and also on Facebook. We also have a number of ongoing recipes and tips as well. So how are you doing so far? You might want to take a moment to self-assess how things are going so far. You've learned quite a bit, and at this point you should be figuring out how to eat, what to eat, and when to eat. And now you've branched out to learn how you can replace high carb items that you may be missing with low carb versions. So the next thing that we want to talk about in the next module is dining out and how to maneuver in social functions. Now, a lot of people, when they first start this way of eating, they hang out at home and they don't go out in public to eat because they don't want to tank their weight loss. Well, we're going to teach you in the next module how you can maneuver eating out, how you can attend social functions, and manage the pressures with some scripts that you can use when family and friends are trying to entice you to eat off plan. So take a break, as always, and don't go right into the next one. Then we're going to move on to Module 10 after you've had a little break and learn about social dining. We'll see you next time on a simple low-carb life video series.